Hey guys, Lotus Streams here with another tabletop simulator tutorial. This time the topic is creating and publishing 40k maps. If you're looking for a tutorial how to play 40k, I'll link that one in the description, but this is not the place. This is where you create all maps or fix maps that others maybe left incomplete or there's a bug that you want to fix. Alright, so first of all we need everything that is not a map, funny enough. I often refer to that as utility, and that's a bunch of stuff. If you're lazy like me and you don't want to do that every time, you create a template, which is what I did. You can find it under Warhammer 40k map template 6x4. If you download that, you go to a map that isn't a map. There's nothing here. All you see is the stuff around the map, which is what I call a utility. Now what you usually should have there is the templates, the different sizes up to apocalyptic and so on. And the more the better, because they often get lost, or maybe you use artillery and then you delete the last one, you know. There should be plenty to choose from. You need dice, scatter die, normal dice, and in addition to that, it's very useful to have markers and tokens like these here. You can find them in the workshop as well, or on this template you can choose whatever you want. In addition to that, you always need additional boards like these here. You don't have to do all the fancy texture on here. It might be just a black board, doesn't matter. You need place to put down your armies, you need place to put down your opponent's army, you need some, room to roll dice. There has to be enough place, and in this virtual world, it's easy as that. You just have to prepare. That's all. In addition to that, it's often useful to have a dice tray. So if you roll your dice, they're not going everywhere, but they're going at least a little bit inside of these boxes here. And they're also useful later, as you will see. Dice tray, psychic cards, tactical cards. Obviously, if somebody wants to play tactical missions, psychic cards right here. All stuff that is useful. I also put down a turn counter and point counters, so you don't have to keep the cards all the time or something gets lost or whatever. This way you have an easy way to put stuff on the table and keep track. As I said, you can use this map template or just create your own. It doesn't matter. If there's something you don't like on this template, feel free just to change it. I'll tell you how to upload your own map anyway. Nothing you do here will affect my workshop. So if you don't like this stuff here, you can just take it and delete it. Now, second is the map itself. Now, the usual format in Warhammer 40k is 6x4. So you want to make sure that that is your size 2. So 72 and 48. And in case the table isn't the right size or whatever, you can use dice trays or these little wooden thingies here to cover up the rest so your map has the right size right away. These are usually games up to 2k points, and after that you would like to have a bigger map because you have enough models to actually populate the areas of the map that would look empty otherwise. And also, to save everybody time, please draw the deployment zones with the pixel paint tool, because it's gonna be a pain in the ass to do that every time, and it's very, very simple too. So basically what you do is you take half of the map, so 37 in this case, 35 plus about here. It will also display that, and you go 12 inches to the side each, like here and here, 12 to the side, 12 to the side. You do that for both sides, and then you have the connections. If you use the paint tool and you click somewhere, and then press and hold Alt, it will create the line towards the next point. So you don't have to draw every single pixel paint by here, you just connect the dots and that's it. Now for Venga deployment, it's a little bit more difficult. You go to here and measure from here to here. That should be 2.4 inches. And you do that on the right side on the bottom, on the left side on the top, and also here on the bottom side left with 2.5 around. Doesn't have to be super accurate, but you know, just to show you what I have at the moment. He's 2.4. Around that value, and then you connect the dots, and there you go, you got Vanguard. As long as you don't delete those with this function, they will stay there, and then you can deploy units, and then the game starts. So this is something that belongs to the map. It's not about what the players want to do and stuff. It's always the case that you deploy stuff a certain way. All right, now we got that one. We need the underground. In addition to that, the background, because the underground and the background is what will make the map. It will set the tone and the flair. So for example, in this case, we have a generic one because I couldn't decide because this is a template. So in that case, you can go to the workshop, for example, and look for backgrounds. And if you find a fitting background, you can copy that because it's mostly in the description. I'll show you very soon. But first, let's go to the underground first. So underground is done with tables, custom rectangle, and there we go. Got, for example, in this case, a sand texture. Obviously, you would remove this red stuff here because it takes away from the game mechanic. If you want to give somebody credit, or if you want to ask for permission, do so before, and then add it into the credits onto the Steam Workshop and not into your game. This is not how you make realistic maps, because it just looks bad. That's all. The texture here sets the tone. So basically this is a pretty dark sand. So we're going for a desert themed map. And according to that, we also want a fitting or maybe halfway fitting background. So you just save your current one. In this case, I already found a background that I could use. We're going with cliffside. You can see very Gerenic, but it's as close as this gets, I think. It's okay. You can create your own, you can do better ones. I'll just use this one for simplicity's sake. You copy that link, and then you go back to your own map, go to host backgrounds, custom, enter the link. And hallelujah, we have our desert table in a, maybe not a desert, but pretty dry land. And it looks pretty nice as well, pretty light. So if you have a jungle map, do something else and so on. Just to be a little bit versatile with the backgrounds and stuff, because it sets, you want to create a realistic environment, so to say, even with something fantastic like Warhammer. Okay, so now we have our table and so on. This is a texture I downloaded from Google, for example. You just Google sand or desert or whatever. For example, if you Google Mars, you get a lot of good desert maps. Just imagine something that you would like to see as your background. It doesn't have to be very fantastic, but it needs to have a very, very high resolution. As you can see, you can already see the pixels here if you go way down, and this is a 3000 by 3000, I think. So it's a pretty big picture, it's not a small one. The bigger, the better. It looks sharper that way. Satellite pictures are very good for this. Now it shouldn't be too bright nor too dark. Best thing you can do is just grab a Space Marine or something and drop him on the surface and see if you can find him. For example, I can see the Terminator wherever he is. There's no gigantic contrast that I need to make, we can see him, even if he's relatively dark. That's good. This is something that you need to take care of, because if it's snow, it might be too bright and it hurts your eyes. You will realize it. If you're working on the map, I would advise you do this stuff first. Very important. This is the most important step before everything else happens. And I'll show you very soon why. Now, next up, we need resources. I went ahead and downloaded everything in the workshop and then extracted the objects. So now I have a chest that contains all the terrain options. I will upload these on my map template as well. So if once this is uploaded, it should be on there. And I'll tell you real quick what's inside the bag, just so you know what's up with this. As you can see, I put it in different bags and different categories, because it's very helpful to not having to search everything all the time again. The first class you start is always underground. Why? Because underground is underground. You're looking for something like that. This, and this. Why? Because this is stuff that actually creates a 3D atmosphere. For example, this hill. You can make this hill really big. There we go. This is making the map a map and not a flat 2D object. And the thing is, you always want to clear the names, no names, also no color tint, and also make sure that the collider is okay. Just drop a space marine on there and see if it's fine. That's all you need to do. Then next you need to find a fitting texture, because obviously these things aren't very pretty in a desert. This is not a desert tile. The first thing that lazy guys do is you put in the same image again. For example, in this case we saw, well, just downloaded. Very interesting, right? So for example, if I want to make a desert land, I might as well put in the same texture. Why? Because they will blend in very, very well. Better than any other picture. Like that. Looks pretty nice, huh? Same here. So for now we will just use these. Obviously, feel free to do anything you like. If you're feeling there should be some rocks texture here or some water or whatever, go ahead and do that. I'll just show you how to make a map that feels like a map to the eye as well. Now, mind you, these white lines do not really appeal to you. Whenever you feel like you're distracted by the white lines, just make sure you remove them. Then you can put your stuff around, and you can always go back and put them back in here. Because now you can certainly see that there's a different view on the entire thing, because the white lines distract your eye a little bit. But you will get used to that. So let's just grab this stuff and put it somewhere. Say we want some hill on the outside again. In case I didn't do it, delete the name. You don't want names. And then the next thing you do is you lock everything down. And the reason why I told you to use the underground first is you have to adjust every texture to the underground. Let's imagine you did something advanced. You took this hill and you put it deeper in the ground. So we got a small hill. Nice, right? So a little bit just. Now imagine you change your underground, you want to change the texture. You're going back here and you change the texture. Then this happens. Yeah, the tiles will not like you changing them afterwards. If you want to do something, do it first, do the lightning first, then put it back in. Regarding lightning stuff, you can work with the specular intensity. If you make it really high, it's gonna start to glow, and then you can try to hit the color tone of the thing. And there we go. Now we have a glowing rock. So if you're going for something like sunrise or dawn, you can work with that. Just make sure it's dark enough. Better a little bit darker than too light. That doesn't change much, but it's okay. Just saying that stuff you can change before everything happens. So if it happens that your collider is not very well made, then fix that before you enter the stuff, and you have to go back. Because every time you go back, you have to lock them down again and then move them. Okay, so we are sure our underground has the right color. We are sure they are supposed to be where they should. That's fine. That's our first layer of additional 3D adding to our map. So underground first bag. The utility bag is what I already told you. It's just stuff that lies around here. You can just copy my stuff too if you like. I don't care. Or put in your own, whatever you like. Just make sure there is something here so nobody has to enter his own stuff all the time. Now, next thing you do is you would start with vegetation and rocks or walls, because those are the bigger stuff. I usually start with walls next. For example, this would fit very well in a desert-like map. Grab some metal walls and put them down here. Always keep them named the right way. Like that. They fit the desert flare, that's fine. And then you can also look for stuff like these walls, for example. They fit this theme. If you don't find something useful, try to search for different textures and just enter them onto the model to see if they fit. For example, this stuff here all looks like it belongs in a desert. This one, not so much. That's more cobblestone than anything else. You have to try a little bit. For example, this one is pretty nice as well. Texture is not very good, could change that, but it looks like it belongs in the desert. It even says desert building. There we go. Now I know this one has a broken hitbox, so be careful with that. You can see that if you're moving stuff onto it, then something like that happens. Then I highly advise you to change its hitbox to something more appropriate, especially if you can't stand on the building as well. Then you put these down the way you like them. For example, this is a once broken building, some kind of area terrain, like that. Lock them down. There's your walls. Just plant those first because they are very hard to adjust. Next thing you want to have is vegetation. I can't stress this enough. Vegetation is very, 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 very good for maps most of the time. Unless you're a straight city district, but other than you're thinking about flowers of Jericho, when you're thinking about a desert, you're thinking maybe a little bit of this grass, for example, to cover up the side here, like that, to make it a little more fluffy. You're thinking palm trees, obviously, small paw trees, and in most of the cases you have some rocks, not hills, more like rocks. For example, a rock on a hill, something like that. Remember, these things here should also have the right texture. So if you find something useful, use that. If not, go with the classic desert look. This one, for example, as you can see, has a color tint. There we go. Look at that, blends right in. Also remember, you don't need very, 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 very much objects or something. You can cheat a little bit with how they look like and so on. So first of all, the eye often can't decide if it's the same object if we just use another perspective. for example, like that. No matter where you're looking from, it doesn't always look the same, and nobody will waste time looking at that anyway, but this way you can get some more rocks of the same kind in, even though you don't know you only have one. For example, like this. The next thing you can do is, if this doesn't work anymore, you lock it down and you use the gizmo. For example, I like to have a half rock, like that is half in the sand. And look at that, it looks a little bit different. You can also try to rotate stuff. You get the gizmo, rotate, and move it a little bit around like that. Look at that. Got some sideway rocks, which is very common. It doesn't feel unnatural. It's something that actually exists in nature. Rocks like these, for example. So if you have stuff, experiment. Make them smaller, make them bigger. Make a small palm tree and a big palm tree and an even bigger palm tree, but stay within the 40K scale. Then turn them. That's the first thing you can do. So they look a little bit different. And then gizmo your way as you like. Maybe one of those. Maybe one on the ground, like that. Higher is a problem, but you know, you can change it how you like. And there we go, got some palm trees with some shadows on here. The lighting is pretty nice here, and it makes very fluffy stuff. If you have trees, always use a very, very small collider. Now, if you're looking for colliders in my kind of objects here, you usually would go to underground and take a crater, because I found this crater has a pretty nice collider. Take that collider, and then I'll show you what this collider can do, what nothing else can. For example, we have a orc boy that wants to sit right there under the tree. Very fluffy, very nice, I like it. Now the orc boy comes close. This is our orc boy, and crap, it gets lifted. Why does it get lifted? Because the collider is bigger than that. Especially here, if you can see the rock moving up and down. So what you can do is you can change the collider to this slot base thing, and as you can see, do that before you're changing anything, as always. And now we can put stuff right into the tree. Now this isn't realistic. Some people will say, oh no, it's not as if it was real. Doesn't matter. We just want to play the game. We don't want to have ultra realism. If your base is inside the tree, you can fix that all the time. You can just move the base out of the tree, but you can never fix a giant tree hitbox by moving your model closer to it. That doesn't work. That's really, really annoying when you play. So change the colliders to something that is bearable. And let's be honest, nobody is sitting on that tree. If somebody wants to sit on that tree, you can lock him down there. You don't have to make the hitbox interfere with everything else, just to have that tree right there where you want it. And also you can see, you can do stuff like this. Now we have a rock on here. Just experiment. That's what I'm trying to say. Like that. If you're having this kind of stuff done, you have some vegetation, some rocks, some buildings, whatever you like. So you have some good cover. You can also go for classic ruins. I wouldn't do that in this kind of map, but just think about it and try. For example, this ruin here is one of these cathedral-like ruins and so on. It doesn't really look like a desert ruin, but if you just change the texture real quick to something that looks similar, get that old sand texture back here, you can see, oh, it doesn't look even half bad. Fits in very nicely. And that's what I'm trying to say. Just try stuff. Trying stuff is always a good thing if you know what you're doing. The general idea is put the big stuff down first and then the rest. That makes it easier later. Most of the time you would like to have some fortifications of some sort, for example a bunker. If you don't want people asking you all the time if these fortifications are usable, which they are never because you didn't pay the points, you can also do stuff like this. You can put it on the ground here, drop it down, rotate, maybe like that. And there we go. Looks very fluffy. Looks like a bunker that isn't usable, but is still in the area basically. And you can use them as cover as you like, but you can't go inside. Then next time we have eye candy. Warhammer lives a lot of these small things basically. For example, something like this is excellent. Have little crate filled with sand, like that, or maybe turned around, whatever you like. This is stuff that looks pretty but doesn't do much. You should always ignore these in terms of gameplay and so on, but it makes it just look much better than anything else. For example, you would expect some kind of barrels maybe next to the ruin. This extends the actual thing to something that looks more than it is. It's still just a ruin, but now we have some barrels next to it, and we can maybe assume there's a story with that, something. I don't know. Just let your fantasy go free. This is not all eye candy what I have in here. You can search the other maps as you like. One very important thing, or to me very important thing, is look for dead bodies. Dead bodies do very well on urban maps and so on. And because Warhammer 40k is a grim dark scenario. This is not flowers and rainbows and everything. So you can make a bunch of dead bodies and a pile of them if you want to. You can even flip them around. And then you can see they look a little bit weird because their backside is missing. But as I already told you, a good map builder will never say this is a bad thing. He will say, oh my, I can drag them into the sand and make half-rotten bodies, for example. So you can adjust your stuff and create a Warhammer-like feeling. This is a very friendly desert at the moment. What's missing here is basically the death and destruction, or maybe not, because maybe this is a map that hasn't been a battlefield yet or something. Just make sure that you keep the theme going, basically. So if this is supposed to be a battlefield, there should be dead bodies, there should be craters, there should be tanks lying around. For example, a predator is always nice. Grab that predator, put it in the middle. You got exploder right here. So we lock it down, rotate it, and then we drive it into the sand, for example. And there we go, we have some nice cover. It looks scenic, and in addition to that, we can animate that later. Other than that, there's faction-specific buildings, also very useful if you want to have some Elder kind of going here, or maybe Tau. Tau is very easy to create too. This is different stuff that you can do. Just be wary if you're putting this stuff here down. Just gather a fundus basically where you can choose from. If you want to have specific stuff like smoke and fire and stuff, you can also search for that in the workshop. And you'll find something like fire, for example, or smoke, maybe. And then you can try to add that to your map as well, because it makes it very, very alive, basically. If you have something like maybe I don't know. Snow, not really, but let's say some smoke. Smoke is always good. So we're going to the back to the map. Whoops, once back. For example, this land raider or this predator is maybe not so long here, so we can basically add some smoke to him and then add this one right into a specific. Can't target it. Oftentimes it's a pretty good idea to gizmo that stuff right away. Then move it here. Into here. Try to take that to make it realistic. For example, like this. So now we have the engine is basically burning or something like that. In this case, smoking because it's too long ago. The idea here is just to make this a living map, basically. Now, if you go to different maps, you need a different theme. For example, this one here is a winter theme. So I have a winter underground, and I have some snow on here, and everything here is pretty light because of the snow. Except maybe something like the wreck that has fire and smoke and so on. It's a little bit different there. Also make sure that the size of the buildings is right, that you have a idea how high is the space marine and how high should the building be in comparison, because sometimes the buildings are a little bit too big, including on my maps. Just have to be careful with that. If you're thinking about placement of buildings and stuff, just remember you would like to have a balanced map. So for example, you need to halfway mirror what the other side have. In case if you're fighting on this side, you have these buildings here, and if you're fighting on this side, you have these two buildings, and then there's here a big gap. Now in this case, I went with the fluffy reasons and said this is a street, there's nothing on there. But if you're creating maps, just make sure that the balance isn't completely off. Don't do one side with buildings and one side without any buildings. That's not a good idea. In general, you would like to have a basically even sides where you're trying, okay, I could go here, I could go there, it doesn't really matter. That's the best map. For example, something like this. I think this map is pretty balanced because I often can't decide if this side or this side is better. It doesn't really change anything. Cover-wise, it's the same. Even from this side, it's more or less the same. That's something you should consider. Just count the shot blockers and the big buildings or ruins or whatever you like. Now there is something that will happen quite often, and I'll show you what on one of my new maps. If you keep cheating with your hitbox making, like I did with the slot-based hitbox, you will get a problem with no collision. For example, this entire shrine here is without any collision whatsoever, because if I do give it a collision box, my units will hop onto here and then will move over here. It will be very annoying to move them through there. So what instead I did is I removed the collision boxes and then added little boxes below here. Basically, I went to chest. You can take dice as well. I went with blocks and then basically added blocks right here and then moved them with the gizmo into the wall until they directly fit below, something like that. And as you can see, it looks like the hitbox is working, even though it doesn't even have a hitbox. But you can see I could put the block on here. So that's something you can work with if you want to create stuff like a shrine, because it will never ever move on top of here, which would technically in game you could stand on here regarding the rules, but it doesn't come very often to play, and it's annoying in all the other times. Same with these ruins. Usually you wouldn't stand on top of them. You would rather have units that stand right next to them. That looks really fluffy if they can do that, and it's really cool to see because they behave like true environment basically. Just a little trick how to make hitboxes that don't even exist properly. Other than that, we need to upload. Now the first thing you want to do on your maps before you upload is you need to clean. Sounds pretty funny, but it's actually true. You need to clean up your workspace that you had before. Because the map itself is often filled with bags and there's some dice going on here and whatnot. Usually I enter the utility last, put everything back in place, then clean everything up and then be fine. If you want to check if there's something left on the map, make a wide selection, and then if something is on the map you will see it and you can remove it. Otherwise there will be stuff left on the map all the time. Next thing is you go to host and disable grids, and you disable hands. There's no reason in Warhammer to use a grid or a hand ever. And if somebody wants to re-enable them, he can do that all the time. But the majority does not need it, so you would disable that. Next is options. You would always write down game Warhammer 40k. Why? If you don't change this one, it will show up in the server browser as something hosts this map as something like RPG, and you don't want that. You want this map to be a specific 40k map. So in this case, you write 40k in there, so everybody knows if the game is shown. It shows something like 1850 point Necrons and game Warhammer 40k. Very clear, very nice to have, and something you should do as a map creator. Put it in there. Other than that, we are now ready to distribute our new map. So first thing you do is you press F11, and then you go right up top and scroll down until you see only the map. Don't count everything off. Something like that, and take a screenshot with print or with F12. I don't know. There's multiple chances. Everybody knows how to play, how to take screenshots, and save that one for later because we will need it very soon. F11 again to bring back the HUD. Then you go to workshop upload, and then you can do your workshop here. First of all, workshop title. Workshop title should say something like Warhammer 40k, 6x4, then the theme, for example, desert, town, and everything else comes into the description. In the description, you should write that you provided everything here, that there's tables and that there's deployment zones and stuff, so people can know, aha, nice, I don't have to draw that myself. Or something like do not use the top of the shrine because I disabled the hitbox, like that. All the stuff that is useful, or how cover saves should be provided. Every rune is 4+ and everything else is 5+, for example, or specific ones. Whatever you like. Then the thumbnail will be exactly what you just saved. Just browse your local files and add them in. And then do the according game types and number of players. I usually mark everything here because it's up to 4 players, no problem. It's a strategy game. It's a template in my case. And it has a background, so I'll add it under background. It has custom models and so on. So you can add whatever you like, and then you upload that one. Once you've uploaded this, there's only one thing you need to do last. You need to go into your own workshop, find your own map, and then go to the uh, to the map itself and change the visibility. So on the right side, change visibility to public and not friends only or hidden, so everybody can use the map. And after you've done that, the map should show up, if you subscribe to it, of course, in your workshop. It's never lost. You can change it all the time. You can always go back to workshop, upload and update workshop. Then you need the 9 digit in the URL of your mod. What you do is you go to the mod site and just right click the picture you uploaded, and then you have a number in there. That's the right one to get the workshop going. You don't have to do a workshop thumbnail every time. It will keep the old one if you don't want to change one. And you don't have to do the other stuff as well. The only thing you need to do is enter the workshop ID and save it again. That's all. So if you're making a mistake, if you found something that is awful, if you found something that people don't like, if there's broken links, you can change them that way. Also remember, this is a way to upload any kind of workshop. For example, I can give you a bunch of examples because I tested pretty much every map in this game. For example, I like Cathedral. It's a great map. Now, obviously, Cathedral has a grid enabled and all that stuff, which you shouldn't do, but at least it has deployment zones and stuff, and you can disable grid pretty quickly. The problem is there is a bunch of links in here that might crash the game for others. So if there's something like a Google Drive link, those are all broken at the moment. It will spawn tons of errors for other people. So what you can do is just take this map, change it however you like, exchange the links, exchange the stuff on the map, check in if you have the same stuff in your bag, and I assure you you have the same in the bag because I pretty much managed to find everything with updated links and so on. You can interchange everything and then save this as a new map in a new workshop. Don't change the original one, it's not your property or whatever. You can write the author that there's a problem and so on, and he might change or not change that. But if he does not, or if he doesn't respond to anything, make your own map. Then you upload it as based on blah blah blah, and upload it for as a new one so everybody can have working maps here. We don't need outdated maps that nobody can play because it's popping up with errors, even though the idea and the design of the map was flawless. Because that happens quite often. There's a lot of good designed maps here that are not playable at the moment, even though they are very, very pretty and well designed as well. As I said, either contact the guy or do it yourself. You now have the tools to do so, and just rebuilding something is actually very easy because you don't have to be that fancy with your thinking and stuff. Also, if you're feeling like your maps look crappy to you and you would like to have good looking maps, just look for some battle reports. Go to Google Warhammer battle reports, and you will see lots of good content from, for example, Mini Wargaming or Striking Scorpion. They do great content, and the maps they or others create, for example, Greenleaf Terrain is one I know, they produce new stuff. So just go over there and try to reproduce it. Nobody will cut your head off if you do that, and they will look fantastic because they already looked fantastic before you even imported them into the virtual world. That's basically the way you can make new maps and also copy new old maps and do something to make this game more pretty, because the map is the majority that you'll always be looking at, and that doesn't change much. Armies come and go, your map should always stay, and if you're creating some, it will pay off a lot because you waste less time setting up your stuff or fixing links or whatever. It will pay off in the end, and you will have a good time. All right, that's it for me. If you still have questions, if you have suggestions, what I'm missing or what you need to know to create maps or whatever, leave it in the comments. Also leave a like if you enjoyed, and if there's anything else I need to put in a tutorial, also tell me that. I think I covered the most of it. That should be all you need to know to play Warhammer probably, aside from designing models, but that's something I cannot teach you anyway. So if you have an idea, just tell me, and I'll be happy to see what I can do. Other than that, thanks for watching and happy wargaming.